All right, so I heard recently that the DEA, that we have uh, agencies and administrations and organizations to ask the DEA by the end of this year to make sure that they reclassify cannabis. And the most, like, instead of like declassifying cannabis or reclassifying cannabis, they're going to reclassify cannabis, and the only thing they're going to do is add uh, cannabis under Schedule 2 so that doctors can prescribe it to patients in need instead of recreationally fully. They will do this by the end of this year. They should have done it by this year, this month. They should be doing it by this month. But I'm pretty sure that the most likely thing that they're going to do is declassify cannabis to Schedule 2. That means that the doctors will be able to research it, and research can be done, and patients can get their medical cannabis. I guess that's a good thing for 2016 for the United States of America, because it looks like a pretty fast act in my eyes to get the movement going for medical cannabis. And making it Schedule 2 would be the best thing for medical purposes. Uh, when do you think they're going to reclassify and make cannabis recreational for sales? Probably after about 4 years of intense FDA approval per strain, making sure that all the ingredients are labeled on the bottles for the nutrients, as well as soil. We need to make sure that the soil is pure and there's no GMO or Monsanto in the cannabis. So Bernie Sanders currently is pushing for banning Monsanto and GMO, or most likely making sure that their ingredients are on the labeling so that people can see if they want GMO or not. And I think we should just ban GMO and Monsanto right away. But I think uh, declassifying to Schedule 2, making cannabis Schedule 2, would be a really good, stringent option and a rigorous process, because we need to make sure that there's no GMO and Monsanto in our cannabis, and especially within the medical cannabis, because people need that as medicine to live. So the best thing we could do is make it Schedule 2, research it fully and regulate it, and make sure that the process for the sales of medical cannabis is clean and it doesn't have GMO or Monsanto in it. And then the recreational sales can be considered safe for the mass populace. So it's easier to make it Schedule 2, analyze it thoroughly, make sure that the cannabis is FDA approved, make sure there's no GMO and Monsanto, and then they can have sales, clean sales of cannabis. And then after that process is completed, they know how to make sure the cannabis is clean, and so then the mass populace can have their clean cannabis without Monsanto or GMO. So I'm assuming that this process, without some generous donation, I think this process, without like a great like $500 million investment in research, without that, like, this process could take like 4 years, 6 years. So I guess the more donations for research, the better, especially once it's declassified, so that we can get that process figured out right away. And the process would be to make sure that every strain is checked for non-GMO purposes, and to make sure that GMO and Monsanto is banned from medical and thus the recreational cannabis. Because the recreational cannabis is pretty much medical cannabis, but probably stronger or weaker. It just depends. It's more focused on like a wide variety of cannabis strain type compounds, and forgot what I was saying, but the recreational cannabis is going to be pretty much medical cannabis. Like all the medical cannabis that has been sold, that will all be like redistributed for the recreational scene within 4 to 6 years. Uh, for the mass populace, because it's already been like figured out and tested, and so they know the CBD, the THC, the CBA, CBC, CBG levels of all the cannabis that's from the medical, and then they'll just sell it to the recreational scene, and then they'll see that all the people that do buy it are generating money for the economy, and they are obviously medicated, and they have those chemical compounds, CBG, CBC, THC, and they know that they will be healthy since it's a medicine. It's went through the medical screening. So, yeah, that's the news up on medical cannabis. That's my future idea of how the process will be, and for the United States of America, and what I think they will do with the cannabis sales of medicinal and recreational purposes. And not only that, the economy generated from it will always be there. You're going to see a lot of alcohol sales switch to cannabis sales, and you're going to see a shift. Not like a super tremendous shift, because research has shown that in Colorado people still love alcohol. So, but 20% of the 21% of the population of Colorado smokes. So it shows that if alcohol is still, the sales is still going to be there. And so it's not a bad idea to just decriminalize it completely, declassify it completely. It's not a bad idea to do that, but the thing is that we need to make sure that the medical cannabis and the recreational cannabis does not have Monsanto and GMO in it. And if you're going to be selling recreational cannabis, you may as well sell medical cannabis with all the research that has been done for the medical cannabis and that certain strain, and sell it to the mass populace, because the process for research has been done. And so it would technically be considered FDA approved. And so once we declassify cannabis to Schedule 2, then we can literally start FDA approving like ingredients in the cannabis, and possibly every strain, because every seed is a different strain and a different type of cannabis plant. So then the FDA could start approving the very strains itself, the strains of cannabis, like Obama Kush strain seeds, and they can start working like that to make sure that every strain is properly approved by the FDA. Thanks for watching. If you have more questions, you can ask me. I know a few few historical facts about cannabis, so that's my future of how cannabis should be processed through the United States for manufacturing, and then thus industrialization for medicinal and recreational sales. Thanks.